What the Buddha Taught by Walpola Rahula. And to reiterate, we are in chapter 6, the doctrine of no soul, Anatta. And it certainly, if you realize your self, your soul, you realize that these terms being used for it aren't quite appropriate. So you say, yeah, no soul, no spirit, but what term are we going to replace for? Anyways, according to the Buddha, there are 4 ways of treating questions. Some should be answered directly. Others should be answered by way of analyzing them. Yet others should be answered by counter-questions. And lately, there are questions which should be put aside. There may be several ways of putting aside a question. One is to say that a particular question is not answered or explained, as the Buddha had told this very same Vajragota on more than one occasion when those famous questions, whether the universe is eternal or not, etc., were put to him. In the same way he had replied to Malunkyaputta and others, but he could not say the same thing with regard to the question whether there is an Atman self or not, because he had always discussed and explained it. He could not say there is self, because it is contrary to his knowledge that all Dhammas are without self. Then he did not want to say there is no self, because that would unnecessarily, without any purpose, have confused and disturbed poor Vajragota, who was already confused on a similar question, as he had himself admitted earlier. He was not yet in a position to understand the idea of anatta. Therefore, to put aside this question by silence was the wisest thing in this particular case. We must not forget, too, that the Buddha had known Vajragota quite well for a long time. This was not the first occasion on which this inquiring wanderer had come to see him. The wise and compassionate teacher gave much thought and showed great consideration for this confused seeker. There are many references in the Pali text to the same Vajragota. The wanderer is going round quite often to see the Buddha and his disciples and putting the same kind of question again and again, evidently very much worried, almost obsessed by these problems. The Buddha's silence seems to have had much more effect on Vajragota than any eloquent answer or discussion. For we see that after some time, Vajragota came again to see the Buddha, but this time did not ask any questions as usual, but said, "It is long since I had a talk with the Venerable Gotama." Now, we should be careful to be silent about that which we do not know. If you ask me a question, I will generally give it. I will, well, not generally, but sometimes I will give an answer saying, I will try to figure out that for you, or figure out a way to put it for you. Let's just say the Sujata offering milk rice to the Buddha from Borobudur, Java, the head of the Buddha from Borobudur, Java, the Buddha from Borobudur, Java, and the Parinirvana of the Buddha from Ajanta, India. Some people take self to mean what is generally known as mind or consciousness, but the Buddha says that it is better for a man to take his physical body as self rather than mind, thought, or consciousness, because the former seems to be more solid than the latter, because mind, thought, or consciousness, chitta, mano, vijnana, changes constantly, day and night, even faster than the body, kaya. It is the vague feeling, I am, that creates the idea of self which has no corresponding reality, And to see this truth is to realize nirvana, which is not very easy. In this Samyutta Nikaya, there is an enlightening conversation on this point between a bhikkhu named Kamaka and a group of bhikkhus. And see, when we talk about my body, my soul, when you talk about my soul, it kind of implies that it's not your soul. I mean, that you're not it, you're something else. Right? These bhikkhus ex Kamaka, whether he sees in the five aggregates any self or anything pertaining to a self, Kamaka replies, no. Then the bhikkhus say that, as so he should be an arahant, free from all impurities. But Kamaka confesses that though he does not find in the five aggregates a self or anything pertaining to a self, I am not an arahant, free from impurities. O friends, with regard to the five aggregates of attachment, I have a feeling I am, but I do not clearly see this I am. Then Kamaka explains, what he calls I am is neither matter, sensation, perception, mental formations, nor consciousness, nor anything without them, but he has this feeling I am with regard to the five aggregates, though he cannot see clearly. This is I am. He says that it is like the smell of a flower. It is neither the smell of the petals, nor the color, nor the pollen, but the smell of the flower. And so these stages we go through, again, it shows we're impermanent. 3 stages of the soul, again, not talking in the way that some people would talk about the soul, like it's your thoughts and your sensations and stuff. That's not what's even meant by the nafs. It would be good if the Venerable Gautama would preach to me on good and bad. Kusala, Kusalam, in brief. The Buddha said that he would explain to him good and bad, in brief as well as in detail. So he did. Ultimately, Vajragota became a disciple of the Buddha, and following his teaching, attained arahantship, realized truth, nirvana, and the problems of Atman and other questions obsessed him no more. Some people think that alaya vijnana, store consciousness, tattva gata garbha of the Mahayana Buddhism is something like a self. But the Lankabatra Sutra categorically says it is not Atman. This is what most people say about self even today. Okay, what is the saying? Yeah. Self-realization, okay, you shouldn't wait to act in regard or God conscious or something until you've realized yourself, but self-realization is pretty much few and far in between. No organization is going to make you self-realized. And then you kind of realize there is no self in the way that you thought there was a self. Kamaka further explains that even a person who has attained the early states of realization still retains the feeling I am, but later on, when he progresses further, this feeling of I am also together disappears, just as the chemical smell of a freshly washed cloth disappears after a time when it is kept in a box. This discussion was so useful and enlightening to them that at the end of it, the text says all of them, including Kamaka himself, became arahants, free from all impurities, thus finally getting rid of I am. Because I am this, I am that, I am that, that's not the I am you want. Well, I guess some of that is what you want, but according to the Buddha's teaching, it is wrong to hold the opinion I have no self, which is the annihilist theory, as to hold the opinion I have a self, which is the eternalist theory, because both are fetters, both arising out of the false idea I am. The correct position with regard to the question of Anatta is not to take hold of any opinions or views, but to try to see things objectively as they are without mental projections. To see what we call I or being is only a combination of physical and mental aggregates which are working together interdependently in a flux of momentary change within the law of cause and effect, and that there is nothing permanent, everlasting, unchanging, and eternal in the whole existence. Here Naturally, question arises, if there's no Atma self, who gets rid of karma actions, who knows the answer the questions better than the Buddha himself? When this question was raised by a bhikkhu, the Buddha said, I have taught you, O bhikkhus, to see the conditionality everywhere in all things. The Buddha's teachings on anatta, no soul, no self, should be considered as negative or nihilistic. They shouldn't. Like nirvana, it is truth, reality, and reality cannot be negative. It is the false belief in a non-existing imaginary self that is negative. The teaching of Anatta dispels the darkness of false beliefs and produces the light of wisdom. It is not negative, as Asanga very aptly says. There is the fact of no selfness. Neirat Nyastita. And we also see Abyssamooch. Abyssamooch, yeah, I kind of like the sound of Abyssamooch. Abyssamooch, you too. Okay, maybe I should.